Hello beautiful Perception Trainers people, and welcome back to another video. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how I am learning to take responsibility for myself. And I say learning to take responsibility for myself because this is a really long process, or at least it has been for me, and I would never claim that I am at a place where I am taking full and complete responsibility for myself all the time. Because, again, that's essentially one and the same thing as saying becoming a full adult, like really growing up. And so I would like to think that I've been sort of on this process since I was about 14 years old. And I'm continuing to learn and continuing to grow and continuing to realize that I am no longer a child, that my life is my responsibility, that the results that I'm getting in my life are up to me, and if I don't like what I'm getting, it's up to me. So again, I'm going to share what I'm going to share with you today from my personal vantage point. I don't want to tell anybody this is what you have to do, or this is how you have to take responsibility for yourself, or this is what it looks like for every person, and therefore if you're not doing what I'm doing, you're not taking responsibility for yourself or any of these things. Again, this is just what has been pertinent for me. This has been what's helpful for me. And this has been what has given me the most freedom in my life. Because to me, taking responsibility for myself and freedom are the same thing. They have been the same thing. The more I am willing to own my own life, to own the consequences of my actions, to own the fact that nobody can make a choice for me, that as an adult, what I do with my life is up to me, the freer I have become. So I want to take this all the way back to where I would like to say that I sort of started on this path of taking responsibility for myself. And that was when I was 14 years old, and if you've watched this channel, you know I've talked about this before, that at 14, I was very, very ill. I had chronic inflammation in my intestines. I think that if I had actually been diagnosed with something, it probably would have been colitis or some inflammatory bowel situation. I had cysts on my ovaries. I had high blood pressure. I was overweight. I had a chronic lung infection that I had had for like 6 months. And I was chronically depressed and anxious. And I had spent most of the year of my grade 8 year on the couch. And like I said, I had cysts on my ovaries, and I had them for like a month, and I had to beg my mom to take me to the doctor, and she kind of refused because I think she just thought it was stomach aches because I had been sick my whole life. And she just didn't really take me seriously. And then when they finally did take me to the doctor, they're like, yeah, okay, you have a bunch of cysts on your ovaries. And there's a good chance that, anyways, it doesn't matter. So I was pretty ill, mentally exhausted, and up to that point, I was in a lot of pain. And I had been in a lot of pain for my whole life as a child. I just was an empathic kid, and everybody's pain was my pain. And then later I found out that my mother is probably a narcissist, and so that obviously had a huge effect on my self-esteem, my self-worth, the way that I saw myself. I was raised in the Christian church, and there were a lot of ideas in there that were really painful, and so essentially at 14 I was just kind of at a rock bottom. And that was, I think, the very first time I realized that nobody was coming for me. And what I mean by that is no one was going to save me. No one was going to rescue me. No one was coming. I was sick. I was sad. I was alone. And it kind of broke that illusion that we have as children, that somebody is looking out for us, and that somebody is, that there's this safety net idea that if I fall down, if I struggle, if I cry out for help enough, somebody is going to come and they're going to fix this for me. And the other thing that I kind of want to say about that is that's normal. We are supposed to have childhoods where when we cry, someone comes. When we don't know what to do, someone comes to help us. When we are lost and confused and lonely and sad, that we have a caregiver or somebody in our life that comes to be a mentor, that comes to be a support, that comes to be that love, that information, that guidance that we need when we're so young and we're so helpless and so unaware and not capable of taking responsibility for ourselves. Because that's the big thing. As children, we're not capable of taking responsibility for ourselves, and we are being programmed by the people around us, by our caregivers. We are being taught what is and isn't reality, what is and isn't something we can trust. And like I say, in modern culture, in the way that we're raised right now, we're being raised to reject our bodies, we're being raised to reject our emotions, we're being raised to reject ourselves and to fit into culture. And so much of culture is antithetical to what is life enhancing and supporting for the human being. And therefore, a lot of us, most of us, are ending up with anxiety and depression and loneliness and a lot of fear and a lot of pain, physical, mental, and emotional, that we don't understand. So that's exactly where I was. I had a lot of pain that I didn't understand. And I kept waiting and wanting someone to come and save me and rescue me and explain it to me. And at the same time, I wanted to be a savior. I wanted to save my friends. I wanted to make my mom happy. I could see that everyone around me was super unhappy. And part of my depression and part of my anxiety was the fact that I wasn't able to figure out how to help people help themselves. I thought I had the answers for what people needed to be doing, especially with Christianity. I thought, just loving people and being there for them and giving them Jesus was gonna help them, and if they could just live a Christian lifestyle, that they'd be happier, even though I wasn't happy. Anyways, the main kind of thing there was just that understanding that I was going to have to figure this out for myself. And that was the first moment in my life where, like I say, I started to take responsibility for myself. And that's when I started dieting, and that's when I started researching health and researching how to heal naturally, because the medical system had failed me up until that point, because I had been to a million doctors and I'd done a lot of things. And then, like I say, kind of going forward from there, my cycle stopped at 15, which I now understand was due to a stress-induced menopause. And I went to every naturopath, and I really dove into health and wellness. And I actually did start to be able to feel better. So I switched my diet up. I started to make my own food. I started to take control of my diet and my exercise, and I did see results. I did lose some weight. But more than that, I was able to sort of start to manage my stomach aches. Not well. I continued to have stomach aches, but I felt better. I was able to feel a little bit better. And that was incredibly empowering. To be a 14-year-old who felt so helpless and so out of my depth and so like life was never going to be okay and everything was awful. To go from that to like a little bit of power, to just seeing that I had some control over my experience in life was everything to me. And that became addicting. I was like really, really addicted to that feeling of like, okay, no, life isn't just happening to me. I'm not just a victim. I have control. I have power. And if I can figure out how things work, if I can figure out the system, if I can figure out why things are happening the way that they're happening, I can adjust myself to align with what reality is, and then I can get what I want. And that was basically my beginning road of taking responsibility for myself. Now, this was not some clear, straight trajectory to awesome results, okay? Obviously, I was 14 years old, first thing. Second thing, the first and hugest major trap that I experienced on my journey to taking responsibility for myself, that when I look at other people, I think is also the big thing that keeps most people from ever learning how to take true responsibility for themselves, is this idea that pain and suffering is my fault. That my pain and my suffering is my fault, and that I'm causing it somehow, I'm choosing it somehow. And it's this odd thing that happens when we start to become adults, is it's almost like we have complete amnesia about the fact that we were children. And I don't know that it's amnesia, but I think that it's just a very deep core lack of understanding of what happened in our childhoods and what happens in our childhoods and how that affects our adulthood. So many of us it's almost like we're going along as kids and we're in childlike psychology where we're just waiting for mom and dad to save us and all these things. And then all of a sudden at some point we come online to, okay, my life is my job now. And this can happen sometime during high school or university or after a traumatic event where we recognize that our parents can't take care of. But somewhere in the realm of when we move out and we start to not rely on our parents for absolutely everything. When we start to gain some independence in the sense of we get a car, we get our own friends, we start to get our own money, we get a job, we kind of, whatever it is for us, we transition from being completely under the care of our parents to starting to develop our own sense in the world and our own way in the world. And then we transition into this adult realm where we start to see that we have pain, and we start to see that we have self-destructive behaviors, that we can't get our shit together in some way. Physically, we're sick, or we're addicted to drugs, or we're partying too much, and even that, like, we can kind of go through like the rebellious phase where it's just all fun and we're teenagers and we're rebelling and we're doing all this stuff, and then eventually it starts to kind of catch up with us that we're an adult now and we're supposed to be like getting on with things. And I think this happens for most of us somewhere in the mid-20s to the early to mid-20s, when we just start to think, okay, no, like, I'm an adult now, this is my life now, I need to start taking responsibility for myself, or we start to feel responsible for ourselves. And that's when we start to just, like I say, most of us, completely flush that we had a childhood, completely flush, and like, again, I just not even being aware that we were indoctrinated into the culture of our family, that we were indoctrinated into the culture of our society, that we weren't given, this is what reality is. This is who you are, this is how to have success, this is how your emotions work, this is how your body works, in the sense of, like, we were handed the truth and handed reality and handed the opportunity to choose everything that would lead to us just being our fullest, highest, most amazing selves that have no pain because we're completely in alignment with reality. We weren't handed that. We were handed this whole mixed bag of things. We were handed our parents' false beliefs, our parents' limiting beliefs, our caregivers' way of doing things that isn't in alignment with how reality works. We were taught that there are good and bad ways of being that have nothing to do with reality. We were taught how to suppress certain emotions, how to deny certain things. that this is what we have to be in order to be worthy of love, that this is what we're not allowed to be in order to be worthy of love, that provision and love are the same thing, because they are in our childhoods. When our parents love us, we are completely dependent upon them to provide for us, and therefore we are completely dependent upon their approval for survival. And then when we transition into adulthood, when we start to become mentally, emotionally, and physically capable of providing for ourselves, most of us never make that transition. We continue to stay codependent, believing that provision comes from the outside, that answers come from the outside, that help comes from the outside when we're lost, when we're confused, when we don't know what to do for ourselves, that someone is going to have to rescue us or provide for us. And the way that we get that is through being pleasing. And most of us stay in that for the rest of our lives. So I, just like everybody else, continued on with my life in my teens and in my 20s, in this constant tug of war between wanting to be myself, wanting to go my own way and make my own mistakes and live and question things and do what I wanted to do, versus the part of me that wanted to be pleasing, the part of me that wanted to be what my caregivers wanted me to be, the part of me that wanted to live the life that my caregivers had told me that I should live in order to have success in life. And so, like I say, the biggest thing as an actual adult, so not when I was 14, but in my actual adulthood, so in my actual 20s, that really kickstarted this process of being able to take responsibility for myself, was, first things first, acknowledging that I had pain, acknowledging that I had coping mechanisms, acknowledging that I had self-destructive behaviors, acknowledging that I had neuroses, things that were wrong with me. Yes? And like I say, most of us can get there. Most of us are aware that we're in pain. Most of us can see that our behaviors are not good, that we have behaviors that are hurting us or hurting others, and usually both at the same time. And no matter how hard we try to change our behavior to become better, we can't do it. We're in pain, we can't get rid of the pain. We have these behaviors that are self-destructive or chaotic. We're addicted. We're coping with eating disorders. We're numbing out with video games. Like I say, we can't get ourselves motivated to get the job we think we should get. We can't get ourselves motivated in health. We spend more money than we actually have. We constantly drive ourselves into the ground. We're sick. We're all of these things. And like I say, we're constantly making these attempts to fix it. To make it better, to fix ourselves, to heal ourselves, to change our lives, to get on the wagon, to whatever it is that we're trying to do to fix ourselves, to get our shit together, to get a job, to get through school, to pay off our debt. And we're just constantly failing, or constantly, even if we're kind of solving one problem in this area of our lives, it seems to like whack-a-mole create a problem in this other part of our lives. And the other big thing too of wanting to be someone, wanting to do something, wanting to get certain results, and not being able to. Not understanding our own behavior, not understanding why we can't get ourselves to change, thinking we know what the answer is to get to what we want, to get to healing, to get to the results that we think we should get and that will make us happy and awesome, and not being able to do it. This is where the wheels are falling off. And so this is why I want to talk about what I did in my life, because I feel like this was the turning point for me where I could actually start to really heal my life. And like I say, move in a direction of taking actual responsibility for myself. So that first step was acknowledging I was in pain, acknowledging I had neuroses, acknowledging I had things that I was doing that I didn't understand why I was doing it. I didn't really know why I was starving myself. I didn't really know why I was a workaholic. I didn't really know why I was a codependent people pleaser. I didn't know why I always let people destroy me in friendships. I didn't know why I constantly sacrificed myself to the point of being so exhausted and so debilitated that I couldn't keep going. And like I say, I got to a point in my life where I could see that I wanted to change these behaviors, and I tried everything that you can try to change, right? Every spiritual modality, every self-help, every personal growth. I had coaches, I had therapists, I had all these things, and it wasn't working. I wasn't moving forward. I wasn't getting better results. I wasn't actually able ever to maintain a positive change in my life. And so what that led me to was, again, acknowledging that I didn't actually have the answer. So the first step for me, the second step, acknowledging I was in pain, acknowledging I had things that I didn't understand about myself, acknowledging I had coping mechanisms, self-sabotage, all of this stuff, unhealthy behaviors, unhealthy habits, acknowledging that that was there. And the second thing was acknowledging that I didn't understand why it was there. And I didn't actually know what I was supposed to do to make it better. Because admitting that was really hard, but really, really freeing. Because up until then, of course, I, like everybody else, believed I had the answer to a degree. I thought I knew what I was supposed to do about my anorexia. I thought I knew, like, right? You eat, you just don't ever let yourself starve. You are on a meal plan, you're doing this and this and this. But I'm still neurotic, and I didn't want to still be neurotic. I didn't want to keep thinking about it. I didn't want it to be something I was on my mind and I just wasn't acting on, right? I could white knuckle my way into changing my external behavior in some ways, but it didn't fix it. Second thing, having the same fight with my boyfriend over and over and over again, having the same relationship problems over and over and over again, and essentially doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And like I say, with working, and I was constantly in this position of wanting to have a better career, wanting to move forward, wanting to make a bigger difference, make a bigger impact, have my own company, all of these things, but yet I just was stuck in these dead-end jobs over and over and over again. And like I say, there was that sense of like, okay, there's something missing here. I'm not seeing something. And admitting that to myself, that if I knew how to stop being anorexic, I would. If I knew how to get the job and get my shit together, I would. If I knew how to stop having these unhealthy relationships, I would. I'm not doing this to myself. And even coming to the place of being like, I'm not choosing this. Because if I could choose something different, I would choose something different. And that's why I say this big key was recognizing that I was shaming myself, guilting myself, and blaming myself for my pain and for my coping mechanisms and for the things that were wrong in my life. And blaming it all on myself, as though I was just this evil, horrible, stupid, lazy, useless person who was choosing to destroy my own life and choosing to destroy the life of the people around me. And when I finally was able to say that, I don't think that's true about me. And most of us don't even recognize, I think, that that's what we're thinking about ourselves. That is the narrative. That I am just a piece of shit who's ruining my own life. That ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm an adult now, and all of these things that are wrong with me, and all of these things that are neurotic about me, and all of this pain that I'm in, must be my fault on some level. And like I say, there's varying degrees of truth to the it's my fault thing. But in order to discover, for me, what I actually needed to do about my pain, because again, we're going to get here. Just wait a second. I had to first acknowledge where the pain was coming from. And the truth was, I was born into a situation that caused me pain. So when I stopped pretending that I didn't have a childhood, and I stopped pretending that all of the problems that were occurring in my adulthood had been born in my adulthood, that was huge for me. It was like, no. Anorexia, overworking, these problems with my boyfriend, the fact that I can't figure out how to get my career on track, all of this crazy shit I believe about myself, that I'm just useless and worthless, and the point of me is to serve other people, and I'm not deserving of love, and all of these things that I started to recognize in myself when I started to get like a self-inquiry practice, and when I was looking at, like I say, looking at my pain and all these things didn't just happen in my adulthood. These things weren't choices that I just made. I wasn't like going along one day and I was like, anorexia seems like fun. I think I'm going to try that. Or, I know I could be healthy. I know I could have like this perfectly awesome healthy body, and I'm just going to be sick because I think that would be fun. Or I know exactly how to have a reasonable, responsible, mutually adult relationship with somebody, and I'm just going to choose codependence. I'm just going to be codependent because that sounds like way more fun. No, of course not. I would never have made the choice to be in any of the painful situations I was in. And this is kind of if you take nothing from this video, I hope you take this. We were all trained to live in the ways that are causing us pain. Everything that we're doing has a root in our childhoods. We were taught how to live in the ways that are causing us pain. We weren't offered, here's how you can be healthy, here's how you can be sick, which one would you choose? No. We were taught to be sick. And if we can't acknowledge that, if we can't start to see, okay, maybe my foundations were wrong. Maybe from 0 to 14, like in my mind, this was the thing, right? I just want to give an example, right? I blamed myself for my health issues for almost my entire adulthood. From the time I was 14 to the time I was like maybe like a year ago, there was still a part of me that was like my digestive issues, the fact that I have to do all of these things in order to have like a normal day, all of these practices that I have to keep myself healthy, that I have to be vegan, that I have to have juice and blah, 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 blah. It's my fault. I had this perfectly awesome healthy body and I just ruined it. And it's all my fault that I have health issues. When I finally was like, hold on, wait a minute. I was born sick. My mom told me that. I was sick my entire childhood. I was sick up until I was 14. And I didn't start getting better until I took the reins at 14. Okay, first things first. Second thing, I didn't choose what to feed myself from 0 to 14. That caused all these problems. I was poisoned, technically. I didn't choose to be born in a country where I couldn't go outside and I didn't have access to sunlight and lived in a city and all these other things that were causing my health issues. That was all something I was actually totally a victim to. I didn't choose that. Okay, wait, whoa. Second thing, this crazy idea I have about what a relationship is and who I have to be and what I have to be in a relationship. I didn't choose that either. That was taught to me. My mom and my dad taught me that was my value and that was the only way that love was available. and all of these things. And so when I started to say, okay, wait a minute. None of these things were born in my adulthood. When I finally took off the veil, that I was just making choices. I was just making conscious, aware, terrible choices. And that everything had been fine, and then I ruined my own life in my adulthood consciously. When I finally was like, Kate, no. Everything that I'm dealing with right now has its roots in my childhood. I didn't choose any of these things. And then I didn't choose any of these things. I didn't consciously have an awareness of something that was better, something that would be more supportive of my health, my happiness, my success. A conscious awareness of how to do that, where to go to do that, how to create that life, and then just chose to do something less and more painful. There was no point along the path where I had a better option and I didn't choose it. And that allowing myself to stop blaming and shaming and guilting myself for the mess that I was in my adulthood. As counterintuitive as this might sound, right? Because that sounds like not taking responsibility. And I get it. Every spiritual person is going to argue with me that that was victim mentality, that that was blaming my parents, that that's blaming society, and that there's no way that you could possibly ever get free when you're not just taking full responsibility for the choices you're now making as an adult. Okay. In order to actually see the choices I was actually making as an adult, I had to acknowledge reality. There is absolutely no taking responsibility for ourselves. There was no taking responsibility for myself before I acknowledged reality for how it was. So the first actual step in taking responsibility for myself was realizing that none of my pain was my fault. It wasn't my fault. I hadn't chosen it. I had been born into it. And it was how I was raised to believe life was. Because the next phase in this, the next phase in taking responsibility for myself, it's not my fault, but it's my responsibility, meant letting go of this idea that I had been taught correctly, that I had been given how life was supposed to work, and I was just fucking it up. Because that is where so many of us get stuck, is that we believe that the conditioning that we were given, this is how you should eat, that this is how you should be, this is what is a good and bad person, this is what's right and wrong. These rules we are all trying to live within. The foundation for what we think life is supposed to be and we're supposed to do. That is what needs to be questioned in order to find truth so we can take actual responsibility for ourselves. So what I realized for myself was, so long as I was blaming and shaming myself, so long as I was saying that my pain was my fault, so long as I was telling myself that what I had been given was fine, that my parents were great, they loved me, they were super, and they were right. They were right about me, they were right about reality, and I'm just doing it wrong. That I'm supposed to be this certain way that they wanted me to be, so even realizing that, like really getting honest with myself of, why do I want to do the things that I want to do? Why do I, like really getting into my coping mechanisms, my anorexia, my self-sabotage, all of these things, and saying, but like, why am I doing this? And so much of the answer was coming from, because I can't be what I want to be. I can't be what I naturally am. And that was a huge revelation. That so many of my behavior, so much of what I was doing was to try to suppress my emotions, suppress my expression, suppress who I was, because I had been taught that who and what I was bad and wrong, that I couldn't be that. And all of us, when we really get down to it, this is why I say there's absolutely no bad part of you. You don't have a self-sabotager. You don't have a bad, evil part to yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. There's no bad part of you. Anything that's self-destructive, anything that looks like a coping mechanism, anything that looks like it's destroying your life and other people's lives, is how you are adapting to the culture you have been trained you have to live within, to the rules you have been trained are the rules that aren't reality. The ways in which you are having to not be yourself, and that is how you are coping with the pain. So that is what I started to recognize, is that when I stopped blaming and shaming myself, something much scarier came to the surface, which was that I didn't actually know how to get myself into a good place. Because if I'm not blaming, shaming, and guilting myself, I'm recognizing that I was taught all of these things, and that all of these things that I were taught are causing me pain. And therefore, they must be wrong. I'm not just doing it wrong. It's not that someone taught me how to eat healthy. I'm doing exactly what they're telling me to do, and I'm sick, and I'm just doing it wrong. No. If what they were saying about how to be healthy was true, I'd be healthy. If what people were saying about what a successful life is and what a good person is and all of these things that I had been trained was correct, I would have been happy. It wasn't that I was just fucking it up. And the second thing was looking at all the ways in which I was failing at being the person I was supposed to be. All the ways in which I thought I was failing. And rather, again, than blaming myself for that, I started to get curious. Why can't I get myself to do this? Why can't I get myself to work the job? Why can't I get myself to stick to the diet? Why can't I get myself to think about something other than this things that I'm obsessed about? Why can't I be different in relationships? Why am I actually so stuck? And that taking responsibility for myself, acknowledging this and saying, okay, instead of getting angry with myself, instead of shaming myself, instead of blaming myself, instead of assuming I have the answer, assuming that what I have been taught is correct and I'm just messing it up, I'm going to allow myself to question that the paradigm might be wrong. And I feel like that was my real first step into adulthood, where I let go of this idea that the adults around me had it figured out, that the people who had trained me how to live were right. Because I started to look at the results they were getting, and I didn't want their results. I looked at the results I was getting from trying to be what they wanted me to be, from trying to live in alignment with what they were telling me to live within, and I didn't like it. So I was like, okay, right? This taking responsibility for myself, the reason it's so hard is because it's admitting to myself that the people around me who were my caregivers, who were supposed to be my elders, who were the people that I could comfort myself at night, that if I don't know what I'm doing, I can go to these people, don't know what they're doing. They weren't right. And that what I think is reality, what I think is going to get me to where I want to go, what I think is going to make me happy, what I think is going to heal me, what I think is going to get me the results that I'm looking for, aren't. Because if they were, everything that I had tried to get healthy and better and happy at that point would have worked. And it hadn't worked. It may have worked for little periods of time, but if I fell off the wagon, it didn't work. And so that was kind of phase 3 of taking responsibility for myself, admitting to myself all the things that I was doing that weren't working. And that is a massive thing. Because again, I was just like everyone else, could go on a diet, could feel better for 2 or 3 weeks, think, okay, this is it. I found the diet. It's working. I fall off the diet, and then I'm constantly just trying to get back on that diet as though I figured it out. That diet is the answer, and now why can't I just make myself do it? And I had to get to a place where I was saying, no, okay, the truth is that diet didn't work. Because if that diet had worked, I would be able to stick to it. If that was really the answer, or if I was even ready for that answer right now, then it would just be this natural thing I shouldn't have to try. And that was something that I just intuitively understood. That when you really find the truth, and you're ready to walk that path of the truth, I didn't need discipline. It just felt good to do the right thing. That reality, when I found truth, it just stuck and it wasn't hard because I had had that experience before. So like when I first found veganism and I first found raw foods, there was no discipline required. When I first found dance, when I first found yoga, I didn't have to try to make myself do those things. It just felt right. I wanted to do it. And so I had this intuitive understanding that when you really find the truth and you're really ready for that truth, that there's no discipline in that. You don't have to push it. You don't have to force it. It just becomes your natural way of being. And and I found the thing too, that the next big piece of taking responsibility for myself was understanding that working from any level of trying to fix myself because I was broken and I hated myself prevented me from ever finding the truth. Because so long as I was working from this place of I'm broken and I'm shitty and I have to fix myself, I don't like who I am right now, even when I would find the truth, even when I would find something that was actually real, I could never stick to it because it didn't match my self-concept. I wasn't able to do what was actually good and right and best for me when I was coming from a place of trying to fix this broken, awful thing that I was. So really taking responsibility for myself was learning to radically accept who and what I was. To actually, slowly, this happened as a process over time, but let go of this idea that I was broken and shitty and there was something wrong with me that needed to be fixed. And fully shifting my perspective to what do I need? What am I not getting that I need? Right? So this was a huge, again, unlocking of childhood trauma. That so much of what happened in my childhood and all the pain that I was in there was because I didn't get my needs met. That environment that I grew up in was antagonistic to who and what I was. And that, again, when I stopped blaming myself and saying there was something wrong with me that I couldn't make that work, there was something wrong with me that I couldn't make these jobs work, there was something wrong with me that I can't make these diets work, there's something wrong with me that all these experts are saying this is what you're supposed to be doing, and there's just something wrong with me that I can't make it work. And I just said, okay, what if that's just not the thing? That's not the path. That's not the right way. It's not me that's fucking up. It's those things aren't meeting my needs. What do I need? And that shift from what's wrong with me that needs to be fixed to what do I need that I'm not getting? What is the thing that's missing here? What is lacking? What's the thing in my environment that's antagonizing me? That's making me behave this way? That shift from there's something evil, wrong, bad about me to no, I'm an awesome person who's just not getting my needs met was everything. So it allowed me to have anger at my caregivers. It allowed me to be sad for myself. It allowed me to actually start to see the truth of all the things that weren't working. Because when I finally stopped making it my fault that everything wasn't working, when I finally stopped looking from this vantage point of I have all the answers, I just can't make it work, when I finally stopped looking through the vantage point of what I have been taught is correct and I'm just fucking it up, I realized that because those ideas were false, and especially letting go of the idea that I consciously know what is right and I'm just choosing the wrong thing. I could choose to stop all of this and be happy, and I'm just not doing it. That if I actually could make myself stop and be happy, and I realized, of course I would do that right now if I could, and I can't. So there must be something missing in my awareness, and it's not my fault. I didn't condition myself. I wasn't taught these rules and knowing that I was being taught something wrong. I didn't even know that I was being taught something that could be questioned. And that was the big key. That when I finally was like, okay, question fundamental assumption there's something wrong with me and that everything I know is right and I'm just doing it wrong, and starting with that, everything else started to unravel. I started to see, okay, whoa, my childhood was actually kind of messed up. And a lot of the things that my caregivers taught me about myself and about what I'm allowed to and not allowed to be isn't true. And a lot of what I think about diet and health isn't true. The fruitarians are not right. The super hardcore, faster vegan people, they're not right. The carnivores aren't right. It's these extreme things. It's not working for anybody. Okay, it's not just that I'm fucking it up. Starting to come from, what do I need that I'm not getting? That was taking responsibility for myself. This is not my fault. I didn't get myself here. I didn't make conscious choices. I made programmed choices. Now, taking responsibility for myself is going to mean questioning my programming. It's going to mean becoming conscious of all of these things that I'm unconsciously doing. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I wanting to starve? Why am I sabotaging myself at work? Why am I? Not what's wrong with me that I'm doing this. Where did I learn that this is what I had to do? Where did I learn that this is who I had to be? If I already liked myself, if I already loved myself, if I felt like I was worthy, what would I be doing? If I felt like my body wasn't my fault and I don't have to fix it, it's in pain, what do I need? Oh, okay, that's like a completely different perspective than how do I fix this awful, stupid thing that I broke? I don't know what to do in my career. What do I need? Why can't I get myself to do these things? What's the positive intention between the jobs I keep quitting and the path I won't let myself walk down even though I think it's the right path? What if it's not the right path? What if I'm right? What if that? Okay, in my relationships, what if all of these horrible stories I have about my partner and how he doesn't love me and how he's not going to be there for me and how I have to do all these things for him? Well, if it feels bad, what if that's not true? And that was another big thing. If something felt bad, it was a hard and fast rule. It's not true. There's something in it that's not in alignment with reality. Either my perception of it isn't correct, my way of viewing it isn't correct, how I'm interpreting the facts is not correct, or just plain what I'm doing is wrong. And really letting myself say, if I'm in pain, I'm doing it wrong. If I'm in pain, I'm thinking about it wrong. If I'm in pain, I'm perceiving it wrong. As true as it might feel to me right now, as normal as it is to me right now, as much sense as it makes to me based on my entire life's experience and circumstance. I'm not worthy of love. No one's ever loved me. Everyone's always just used me. So it's clearly true. Okay, but that hurts. That's how I started to unravel. Well, no, now I'm unconsciously choosing all these relationships based on that. I'm telling people that that's who I am. And so I'm only making friends with people who like that person. So of course I'm not finding people who like the real me, because I'm not showing anyone the real me. Because I was indoctrinated into the idea that the real me is shitty and no one's ever going to like that. So that's where that came from. I wasn't making a conscious choice to lie to people about who I was. I wasn't intentionally manipulating people into believing that I was just a counselor who didn't want or need anything. I thought that's what I had to be. That wasn't my fault. But in my adulthood, it was my responsibility. So now I'd say, okay, I have this conditioning, I have this trauma, this is real, this happened, but guess what? My mom's not going to fix that. My dad's not going to fix that. My church is not going to fix that. No one's going to fix it. I'm going to love myself enough to discover who I actually am and to be brave enough to show that to people in relationships and see what happens. I'm going to start to like who I am, even though my caregivers told me that person was not lovable. I'm going to take responsibility for myself, and if no one likes who I really am, okay. But this isn't working anymore. Acknowledging that it wasn't working, acknowledging that it wasn't my fault, and then trying something I'd never tried before. This is always the final step in taking responsibility for ourselves. Is that willingness to say, okay, this thing that I'm doing isn't working. I'm not going to just try to figure out how to do it different. I'm not going to just try the same diet just a little bit different. I'm not going to try the just opposite diet. I'm not going to just go now, instead of being codependent, I'm going to be completely independent and not need anyone and never give anything to anyone ever again. I'm just going to be completely closed off and I'm just going to only take care of myself. Because that didn't feel good either. It was, where's the middle ground? How do I start to understand what I need and what I want in relationships to have the capacity to allow other people to care about me, to care for me, even though that's super scary, to be vulnerable without being so vulnerable to everyone, right? Be discerning in my vulnerability. It was learning these things, learning these complex ideas. And that came over time. Okay? So the real, like I say, learning to take responsibility for myself. Foundationally, if I'm in pain, something is wrong. Second thing, I didn't consciously choose that. That was taught to me. Third thing, let's question what I was taught. Let's question what I believe. Fourth thing, let myself feel how I feel. Get angry at my caregivers, be sad for myself, be resentful, be all of these things at what actually happened, not the present circumstances. Because that was another big thing. It's like I could always get mad about what my boyfriend was doing, or mad at the relationships I was in currently, or mad at myself for what was happening in my body right now and all of these things. But all of that was just a result. I had to feel the pain of where it came from. I had to feel the pain of the source of it first. Let myself go to, okay, where did this come from? I needed to be upset with my caregivers. I needed to be upset with what I was taught in the Christian church. I needed to be upset with the roots of things. So then I could see the path of how I got to where I am. See how I had made all these unconscious choices. That it was just me acting on programming. Seeing that it wasn't my fault. But then coming online and saying, okay, now what? Now what do I want to do different? Because this isn't working. I don't want to keep going with my conditioning. I don't want to keep going with these false beliefs. So I'm going to be upset about where it came from. I'm going to let myself not take the blame. And then I'm going to say, now what am I going to do different? And that was the last part of taking responsibility for myself, is saying, I'm not going to wait for someone to come and tell me what the answer is. I'm not looking for an expert or a guru who knows everything. I am fully happy to take information from anyone and everything that has truth, because everyone has something that is true. Everyone has something to say that has value. And I can discern that. But it came down to learning to trust myself, learning to take risks, to try things, to see how it goes, and to not blame anyone anymore for the results of my actions. And to say, if I did something I was unconscious about, I did something, I'm making a choice that I didn't want to make. Why did I do that? Where did that come from? Childhood. Always childhood. Never in the present moment. And then when I made a choice when I consciously made a choice in my adulthood, own the consequences. If I hurt myself or I hurt someone else, you apologize. You learn from that. And again, shame and blame were off the table. I don't guilt myself for hurting myself or others, and that doesn't make me a sociopath at all. I have compassion for myself and for them. I make amends as soon as possible. And then I learn from it because I know that shame and guilt keep me trapped in doing the same thing over and over again. So when I've hurt myself or I hurt someone else, I say, why? What did I learn from that? Why did that hurt me? Why did that hurt another? Why did I think it was going to go a different way? What did I think was going to happen and what actually happened and why did that happen? What did I just learn about reality? So then I'm not going to do that again. Not because I'm horrible and bad and awful and wrong and just chose to hurt this person. Of course not. I didn't choose to hurt myself, ever. I was always doing the best I knew with what I had at the time. Hindsight, and that was this is another rule that I live by. Hindsight is 20/20 and I never ever regret. I don't regret things that I've done. I learn from the things that I've done. I say I did what I did because I thought it was the best thing. I found out it wasn't, and then I learned why so that I could do something different. I was trying to get a need met, that wasn't the way. I was trying to help this person, that wasn't the way. I was wrong. It's okay to be wrong. It's so good to be wrong, to admit that I was wrong, and to figure out why I was wrong, what I wanted, what my intention was, and what's a better way of getting that need met. I let myself fail all the time, and I take responsibility for that. In that, what did I want? What was I trying to get? How did what I do not work? What did work about what I did? And what can I try next that's different to try to get a better result? So I hope that this was kind of an overview that resonated with you at some point. Your choices that you're making now in your adulthood are not because of you. We all need to go back to our childhoods and admit our traumas. And that's scary because admitting that our caregivers were wrong, we all want to shame and blame and guilt ourselves because that gives us a sense of security, that we know how life works, that our caregivers were right, and that we're just doing it wrong. Because then that makes us feel like we already have the answers and everything is right, and we don't have to question the foundations of our reality. We can just believe we're doing it wrong. We have to be brave enough to let that go. That what we were taught might be just fundamentally wrong. If we're in pain and everything we're trying to do to get out of pain is not working, it's probably because what we learned is fundamentally wrong. And we have to be willing to take responsibility for our childhood traumas and pain and be upset with our caregivers so that we can discover what was wrong about what they taught us and then be brave enough that in our adulthoods now, we have to do something different. We have to start making conscious choices. We're not making conscious choices if we're hurting ourselves. So just take that off the table. You're not making a conscious choice to hurt yourself. You're running on programming if you're hurting yourself. So let yourself go back to where that came from. Let yourself get upset about that. And your answers for what to do to heal yourself will come from there. You are not broken. You're not getting your needs met. So what do you need? What is missing? What are you looking for that you're not getting? Where are you willing to say it's not my fault? It's not my fault. My conditioning is not my fault. What I think is real right now that isn't is not my fault. But it's my responsibility now. If there's pain, it's not true. And we be willing to investigate and not know and try until we find the answer. Okay? So that's that. I hope that helped. join the mystery school, and I'll see you in the next video.